You know, there's nothing in the God-man born of a virgin story that is supported by the Messiah materials. There's nothing in the Messiah story that's supported by the God-man materials. They're just both in there because there were Christian communities that were wedded to both interpretations. Yes, anybody over on this side? We're having an imbalance here. Federal regulations require me to have a number of questions from this side. And I'm not getting, okay, you're very close to that side.
Maybe it's not a question, but the year zero, I mean, how did that get defined, or when did that
Well, actually, one of the big problems was chroniclers didn't count the year zero until, like, the Renaissance.
So they just, at some point,
They just assumed that they...
10 years back.
Yeah, they just counted as though the year 1 BC blended into the year 1 AD. And didn't realize, until like 1600, nobody realized that there had to be a year zero.
So in the 1600s, that's when it was defined, the boundary between BC and BC?
Well, no, that basically that little nicety has just been kind of ignored, because by then, the better scholars were already placing the birth of Jesus a little earlier, somewhere between 4 and 7 BC. This came in, if you try to reconcile some of the clues, like if you're looking for a time when Quirinius was the governor of Syria and King Herod was reigning, well, Quirinius served 2 terms that were not consecutive. He served once and then he served again, and only one of them was Herod on the throne in Judea, so and that way scholarly opinion basically started saying that Jesus was actually born between 4 and 7 BC. And that's widely enough known that in most churches, the Christmas sermon will, have some winking acknowledgement that, well, it wasn't in the year 1 or the year 0, it was really 4 BC. And so that means that Jesus didn't die at 33 AD, died in 28 AD, blah, blah, blah. So that's really well accepted today. A little less well accepted is the probable truth that it never happened at all. But yes?
I was wondering if you could elaborate on the non-Christian parts of Easter, like the bunnies and eggs and rabbits and flowers and that kind of thing.
Oh, well, here, just give me a moment. I have a 45-minute PowerPoint called Easter. You'll really love it. How long do we have the room? Well, basically, I mean, really basically, because I do go on for that long at Easter time. But basically, Easter is a festival to celebrate the coming of spring. It's a fertility festival. So the eggs and the bunnies are all there as symbols of fertility. And there was there was a strong pagan tradition of usually very explicitly sexual holiday celebrations tied up all around the idea of fertility. And
well, that's why the Easter Bunny hides the Easter eggs. You don't want anybody to know he's screwing the chickens.
Let the record show I did not say that. I did do ho, 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 but I didn't say it. But, yeah, so again, this was another case of an existing pagan celebration where, the ancient world was used to having a celebration around that time, and however unwell the new Christian celebration fit on it, it wound up having to be grafted to it. And so it's basically the old background as a fertility holiday. And yes, you're absolutely right to ask that question because it has nothing to do with rising from the dead. Yes.
I remember reading somewhere that St. Francis of Assisi was the first one to put together a crash.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that was in Italy, and I don't remember when he lived, but it was certainly much earlier than the 1800s. So how would you tie it with that, or how would you explain that with your concept that Christmas is strictly England and the United States? This is a different time, much earlier.
Well, actually, the tradition that St. Francis of Assisi personally created the first crash is probably legendary. As is the belief widely held to this day among American Lutherans that Martin Luther himself invented the Christmas tree after he was walking home one starry night and saw some stars shining through a snow-laden tree. Also not true. But there were creche-like traditions all across Southern Europe. And I don't know precisely how that came to be acquired by the English and American tradition, but it was, otherwise we wouldn't have it today. And again, I haven't dug up what the mechanism is, but I'm pretty confident there is one, just as, you know, we do German Tannenbaum, and here it comes in with Prince Albert. But it's not actually true that St. Francis of Assisi invented the first creche. That's a widely distributed pious fable. It was probably the work of a committee. Anyone else? Okay, we'll go back over to this side one more time.
I don't mean to test your biblical knowledge or anything, but it's expressly forbidden in the Bible somewhere. I remember the text to bring a tree into your house and decorate it with tinsel and whatnot. Do you know if that was an ancient tradition prior to the supposed birth of Christ?
Actually, there's a lot of scholarly dispute about the translation of what that passage actually meant in the original languages. But it's come down to us, certainly by the time of the King James Bible, exactly as you said. And it's in fact one of the primary proof texts that Jehovah's Witnesses and Seventh-day Adventists rely on to demonstrate that the celebration of Christmas is unbiblical. And, well, considering how little consistent that only 2 of the evangelists actually say about the birth of Jesus, I don't think it's very hard to prove that celebrating Christmas is unbiblical. I think the Jehovah's Witnesses have a pretty good argument there when they don't about much of anything else. But I have to, you know, kind of like truth in speaking, I have to admit I may have a bias in favor of the Jehovah's Witnesses. They put my book into its second printing. About 7 years ago, now as you probably know, the Witnesses produce a magazine called Watchtower that they print millions of and give away. And every year their November or December issue has a cover story about why Christmas is unbiblical and people shouldn't celebrate it.
Oh, yeah.
About 7 years ago, their annual Christmas bashing story was based almost entirely on my book. They named the book, they named me, they carefully cherry-picked their many quotes so that you wouldn't get any idea that I was an atheist. And witness families thronged Amazon and bought hundreds of copies, and Prometheus Books had to print more. Now at this point, when I bring this up, I always used to say, I would love to have been a fly on the wall in one of those witness households when they opened up this book that had been recommended in their church's newspaper, and it was an atheist screed. Well, yesterday, when I spoke to Minnesota atheists, a young man put up his hand in the audience and told me that I was someone whose life had been changed by my book, only it had made him start celebrating Christmas. He had grown up in one of those witness households. They saw the Watchtower, they sent away for my book, they got it, they read it, and he and several other members of his family turned into atheists. And now they're rebelling against the witnesses, so they insist on celebrating Christmas. I guess that comes under the heading of you can't win them all.
It's called irony.
Any other questions? Yes?
So there's no longer the physiological need to acknowledge the change in seasons and the solstice and the temperature, because we do have heat and we do have lights. But there is something psychologically, particularly in regions such as this one, where it's miserable and cold and you can't go outside and you're trapped in your house. And have you noticed that even within the United States, climate plays a part? And also, you said that you did acknowledge the New Year, and something that I do, and I'm interested in your opinion of it, is I don't do anything in the early part of December at all, but I do send out New Year's cards, and I do have first week of January, a New Year party with, budding branches on the table and things like that. And is that, because of the time of year, too close to passing and making it seem like Christmas, because it is, feasting and it is, but because this time of year, there's such a long tradition that there's something about the human psychology where you need to do something when it's cold and miserable.
Well, actually, I don't see a lot of problem in a New Year's celebration. I mean, Christmas takes 6 to 8 weeks to get going, but once it happens, it ends with a bang. And then, New Year's is another holiday in its own right. So I think you're probably pretty safe from having anyone, if you have solstice-like trappings in your New Year's party, having somebody think that you're secretly celebrating Christmas.
Well, that's
I think it would be a lot more troublesome if you were doing something like that. One, keep it warm, and I'll get back to you.
well, I seriously.
I'm still answering your question, but yeah, where was I? My train of thought derailed. I'm sorry, but
About New Year's.
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I think you'd be at greater danger of giving the wrong impression if you had a party like that, like the 15th of December, because then it would be read as Christmas. But one of the things that I've always found puzzling is that the whole winter vocabulary of the holiday seems to be immune to actual climate. I mean, they'll sprinkle fake snow on houses in Hollywood and run around with Santa hats when it's 80 degrees. So I'm not sure to what degree actual climate really plays a role. And I live in Buffalo, so we, you get the cold, we get the snow. I'll trade you, but and I still think there's such a huge difference between winter as a thumping inconvenience and winter as something that's almost certainly going to kill someone in your family this year. That it still strikes me that the ancient solstice tradition as it existed is pretty thoroughly delegitimized today. We just don't have those needs. And again, I think this, one other example of how decoupled all of this is, it is true that there seems to be no link between the actual climate. People in Atlanta will, put up their Courier and Ives prints of people riding sleighs and not think anything of it. Now, there is one example where the observance of Christmas has, to some small degree, taken cognizance of local conditions. And that is when the Australians started celebrating Christmas at the height of their summer. There was a long tradition of kitschy merchandise, plates, and what have you, that sold real briskly in London, showing Australian families having sweat-drenched picnics for Christmas. But, I think winter's still inconvenient. You can get killed with your car slipping on the ice, or your heat can go out and you can freeze, but it doesn't happen to many people. It doesn't happen very frequently. And I think the human community approaches winter with something close enough to a sense of mastery that the old rules really have changed. Okay, it's your turn.
That's inconsistent. If you're celebrating New Year's, you're celebrating Christmas, because we base the calendar on Christ's birth, which we don't really know when it was, but I'm the opposite. I like Christmas, and I don't celebrate New Year's because it's an arbitrary point in time for the new year. I mean, like I said, you can celebrate the new year the 1st of June.
Well, I'd like to see us have it. Actually, if I were king of the country, we'd have a week-long holiday when everybody could get together and gather with their family members from all across the country, and it would be in June. That would be a wonderful idea. Travel when the weather's good.
Thank you.
As for New Year's, well, I suppose to a degree it gets down to, you got to pick your battles. And after I battle with Christmas and Easter and Thanksgiving every year, I just get tired. And if you don't like New Year's as much,